record.
Hi.
Hey, Jeff. So, we'll just give it a couple more minutes. The number's going up for attendees, so we'll just make sure that we give enough time for everyone to get in. Can you see my screen okay, everyone? Okay, excellent. I remembered to record, so that is important. I'll ask the panelists to stay on mute when you're not speaking so that we don't get tons of background noise and things. And if you start talking and you don't turn mute off, we'll remind you and publicly embarrass you. Oh. It's been some day. Kaz and I just got off another call. So yeah, long day.
That's right.
All right. Well, I want to be respectful of people's time, so we'll go ahead and we'll get started. I see some more families joining us, so welcome. I'm so glad to see so many people here, and I know that we're recording for folks who couldn't make it live, and will be watching us later. Thank you so much. So we're really excited to bring back this Parent Hour series. I'm looking at the list of attendees, and I see a lot of new names, but I see some familiar names too. We started doing Parent Hour last year for the first time. Every 2 weeks or so, we would talk about a timely topic that was important for the transition into the first year. So we might talk about registration or billing or how to get counseling support or really whatever kind of the hot topic was of the time. We focused on first year students. It was pretty successful. I mean, we had a lot to learn, but we really enjoyed the experience and we plan to do it again. And then this year rolled around and it was COVID year. And we said, okay, let's not put out a full menu of topics at the beginning of the semester because we don't really know what people are going to want to talk about and hear about because everything is COVID, really related. So, we've gotten to the point in the semester where I think it's important to talk about COVID, but it's also important to talk about other business. Again, like registration is coming up. Bill, how to pay your bill, how to talk to financial aid, other university business that we really want to be able to cover with families. So if you ever have a topic you want us to cover, we're happy to do it. I'm really glad this series is back. So take a look at the parent page to see what other topics are coming up. But we figured that the questions on many people's minds, as we know from our emails and social media and phone calls, have to do with COVID, and that makes sense. So we thought it was only appropriate to make that the first topic. So my name is Jessica Nicklin. I'm the Associate Vice President for Student Success, and I am joined by my esteemed colleagues. I'll let you each introduce yourselves. If you want to just jump in and go around and say your name and what department you're from or what role I guess you're playing in the COVID response.
Hi, good evening, everybody. My name is Kenna Grant. I'm the Executive Director for Student Health and Wellbeing, and I am overseeing the COVID coordinated response, and I will explain the various teams and what that means later. So welcome.
Oh, Norm, you're muted.
Thank you, Jess, for publicly humiliating me in front of everyone, as you said you're going to do. Hi, everyone. I'm Norm Young, AVP of Facilities and other things at the university. As far as COVID goes, obviously cleaning and sanitization, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about some wastewater testing we are doing, which is something I never thought I was ever going to do before, but in this environment, it really makes some sense. So I'll talk a little bit more about that later.
Hi, everyone. I'm Michael Zalauskas, Chief of Department of Public Safety, or they'll go by Kaz the rest of this meeting and forever and ever. But I assist Jess on her team for the COVID response team and oversight on all logistics on getting people into where they need to be.
Hi, everybody. My name is Dimitra Eleftheriou. I'm the physician over at Health Services, and we're pretty much the doctor's office for the students when they're away from home.
Good evening. My name is Jill Engel-Hellman. I'm the Director of Residential Life and part of Team 3 that you will learn about later. And we also spend time in our office making sure that the students have lots of great things to do, but are observing social distancing, wearing masks, and all of those things.
Last but not least, my name is Jeff LeBlanc. I am the Director of Operations for Dining Services on campus, also part of Team 2, really responsible for making sure students in quarantine are happy and they're healthy and they're fed well, and that we take care of them for any other services that they may need while they're in quarantine.
Great, thank you, everybody. I think out of all of the parent hours we have planning coming up, this is the largest panel. And I think that you heard, my panelists saying my team A, team B, team C. I mean, it truly takes a village to make this happen. And I don't think I've ever seen such a coordinated effort among different departments at the institution since I've been here 12 years. And, it is truly inspiring to see all of the different units come together and work. And, we hear the expression a lot, building the plane while flying it. And that's a lot of what we're doing. And we want to talk about with everybody tonight. So thank you, panelists, for joining us. There's a lot to talk about. We'll keep an eye on the Q&A. If you want to post anything in the chat box or in the questions, we'll try to respond to them either in the chat or also live as well. So we're going to talk a little bit about our daily efforts. So what's going on behind the scenes that you might be curious about, explain a little bit about our results, talk about our isolation and quarantine process specifically, and then looking ahead, what are we planning for, what's coming up next. So our daily efforts, the first thing to mention is our Live Safe app. So really part of being a healthy community is being responsible and having ownership over our own health and wellness. So you may have heard of this. If you come on our campus, you may have downloaded it and maybe entered some information once. But we require all students and faculty and staff to do the Live Safe app every day to monitor their symptoms. So I will admit, and I told Kaz this, sometimes I do it while I'm driving to work at a red light, and that's not not what I should, my habit, what I should be doing. But it needs to get done. And if you hear your students talking about it or you're thinking about it, I mean, we really are monitoring what we get from the Live Safe app. So we'll ask a series of questions about if you're feeling any symptoms outside of the norm, have you had any exposure to anyone with COVID? Have you tested positive for COVID? And if somebody tests or says yes to any of those things, they'll get a red X and they get follow-up from one of our contact tracers. And if there's cause for concern, then they get referred to health services or to their own medical provider. Same thing for faculty and staff. So I think students wonder, is anybody even looking at these? Yes, we are looking at them every single day, all day, and making sure that there is follow-up. So I once put in things to get the red X, and then of course I got a call, just to see what would happen. And we get a lot of that actually of someone miscoding something. But this is what it looks like if you're allowed to go to class, you're allowed to go to work, you get a nice red X, you get an email that says you get a red X. And then you can show it to public safety at the gate, or sometimes faculty members ask for them, or just a way to kind of keep track of the general health on campus.
Jess, you mean green check mark, not red X, right? So if you get a green check mark, you can come to campus, yeah. Not the red X. And just so they know as well that we're screening visitors, contractors, vendors. We're not allowing really vendors to come to campus other than if they have to be there for deliveries or whatever. And we also just implemented random temperature checks at the main entrance as well. We were doing that when the school was essentially shut down. We were taking everyone's temperature that came to campus. It's not logistically possible right now. So we are screening people right now. I don't want to, unless you have questions on this, I'll just give you an overview. We do have one entrance, one exit to campus. We're screening people as they come on campus. People who are, I say, daily visitor, people that come to campus, faculty, staff, students, all have stickers on their cards so we can get them through that checkpoint pretty quickly. And then when traffic allows, we're doing random on everybody that comes to campus, just doing random temperature checks as well. So you can ask me more questions on that if you have it, but I wanted to plug that information.
Thank you for clarifying that I was saying the wrong color, and it's like a Stroop test at 8 p.m. Thank you, appreciate that. So in addition to the Live Safe app, the daily health screening, there's also an opportunity for students to, or staff members, or really anybody on campus to report tips. So Kaz, do you want to mention what that feature is?
Yeah, so as you can see on this slide here, we actually have a tile dedicated to just COVID tip information. So if anybody using the app, and anybody can download it and use it for our campus, anybody can click on that information, send us a tip on anything. And on the last call, Jess and I could have spent hours talking about it because we get tips all day, all night long. They go into our dispatch center and they're triaged immediately. This is live information. Students, anybody that's using that can be anonymous or not anonymous. We prefer that they're not, but if they are not anonymous, we can communicate back and forth with them on what information they're sending us. So whether it's too many people in an area, someone's not wearing a mask, whatever that tip may be on anything. I'm just talking about COVID right now. Those are triaged immediately in our dispatch center within seconds and sent out. Jess and I just developed a flow chart. We never thought we'd do so many, right, Jess? We have a flow chart on isolation, quarantine, Live Safe tips now. So we have a flow chart on how those are addressed and who's addressing them. So they're addressed real time and taken very seriously. So that information is 24/7. And again, if someone from the team isn't available that needs to address it, someone from my department will address it immediately.
Thank you. So we mentioned through the Live Safe app that we have contact tracers, who will follow up. So all institutions have some sort of, or have to have some sort of contact tracing set up. And when we began this endeavor, we looked at several different models. So you can purchase an app that you expect students to and faculty and staff to put on their phone. There's even, I sat through a demo of a bracelet that would buzz if you got too close to people, and it would track. And we didn't really like those options because it just felt, we knew students would feel like it was intrusive. If they wanted to go to a party, they would just turn the app off, the location off, or take the bracelet off. And a lot of schools were investing in contact tracing through training students, so maybe nursing students, and some schools have one or two people that's just part of their job doing contact tracing. And we partner very closely with West Hartford Department of Public Health, and she said, you're my partner. I want you to have registered nurses doing this, and we said okay. So we have a team of 14 registered nurses that do contact tracing and work with our health services department and our team A that Ken is going to talk about. So they monitor the Live Safe app every day and follow up. And when we do have a positive case, they call the person, they find out who their contacts are, they call those contacts. And then as part of the process, they're all trained with the Department of Public Health. They follow up with the individuals who are both positive cases and in isolation, and also potential contacts that are in quarantine. We also have something, in terms of students who are testing, they might have symptoms and they've had no known contact, but they're experiencing symptoms, been tested, but no known contact. So we follow up with them as well and try to get as much information as we can, pending the positive test. So we had somebody from that we partner with in the state saying that the contact tracing that we're doing is a model for other institutions, because it is really a full-time job for more than one person. We were worried about students doing it because we were worried about confidentiality and how honest will you be with one of your peers. And this model has been very successful. And Kenna will talk more about that when she talks about Team A coming up. Our favorite, we're not to our favorite topic yet. Weekly testing, one of our favorite topics. So health services does symptomatic testing, of course, or you can get a test by going off campus if you need one. But we are doing weekly community surveillance testing as well. So sometimes it's random when students get selected. We're doing close to 600 students a week now. And other times we try to target, be intentional about going through all of the different dorms, about going through different, high touch majors. So if you're in heart or art or in the sciences, and you might be closer to people just by the nature of the work that you're doing, we might try to circle through those majors, RAs, different clubs. So we try to get a good representative sample each week. And I always say, we're not trying to find the people that are negative and trying to make our numbers look good. We're really trying to target the areas that we're concerned about and we think are higher risk, because we want to identify the positives. So we're doing our testing currently on Mondays and Tuesdays. Students get an email. I think the best lesson that we can take away from tonight is please ask your students to check their University of Hartford email for invitations for testing, because sometimes we do really have to chase them down. They'll get an invitation from me or from one of my team members telling them to come to testing. It is free for them, and they will get their results via email within about 24 hours, and then we get a report within 48. If they're negative, they get the email. If they are positive, they would get a phone call, and all of our contact tracing would begin. So that is our weekly testing. And our favorite topic, Norm, wastewater testing.
Wow, that's our favorite. That's great. It's my favorite too. So we're doing kind of a novel thing here. There's a few institutions doing it, but we adopted it pretty early on. It's another tool in the arsenal of trying to figure out what's going on campus. So I guess I can describe the way this really works. I mean, why do you do it? Why do you do wastewater testing? Well, it's a predictor and it's a verifier. So before I finish that off, let me talk about how it actually gets done, because this is the nitty gritty is so much fun. You literally have to get into manholes around the campus, and you have to figure out, as you can see the pictures here, you have to figure out where you can isolate various sections of campus. So we have been able to do that. We can isolate 3, 4, 5, actually 5 sections of campus is what we're doing right now. That starts to delineate various dormitories on campus and residence halls, also academic buildings, by the way. We're also testing those areas as well. And we literally go in and take a sample of wastewater that's coming through the pipes. It gets sent off in a cooler to a lab that's actually in the Midwest. It gets analyzed and it gets sent back to us. So we test every Monday. We get our analysis back on a Friday. So why do we do it? Well, as you're looking at this, when you start to get trace elements of, it's an RNA basically that is part of the virus that can be read through this analysis process. When you see that there's some trace elements, or maybe more than trace elements, you know something's going on in this particular area. So what we're able to do is say, okay, Jess, you're looking at testing some folks, you're doing random sampling, but let's be a little less random and let's look at some of these various areas that we're seeing some trace elements coming in, or maybe more than trace elements. We're seeing some things happening. And then so that the testing can be focused in that area. It's paid off for us. We've been able, as Jess said, we're looking at areas that are problematic. We don't just want to see the areas that aren't. So I can tell you, when we first started this, one of the hot spots that came in from this testing turned out to be exactly where we were doing isolation and quarantining of students. So, okay, it works. We know now that we're getting samples that are pretty high from those areas. So you know what? We don't test those areas right now because we know that we're going to get a higher sample from that. So we're focusing on different areas. That's the predictor part of it. The back end of it is it's a verifier. So when we get some testing results that come in and we go back and look at what some of the wastewater testing said, was that higher in those areas that we found some testing? And we found over the last 7 or 8 weeks that we've been doing this now, that it correlates perfectly. So it's a really interesting way of looking at things. It tends to be used by bigger cities and larger campuses because you want to get sector, you want to be able to focus on sectors. But even in our mid-sized campus, it's really helped us actually focus I guess, Jess, we're doing about 20% of our population. Is that what we test on any given week? It helps us focus that 20%. So we're pretty happy with what we're doing right now. We're going to keep doing it. It's fun. It's fun to get into manholes and pick up that stuff and figure out what's going on. But it's something I haven't thought I've ever done. But it is it's just another tool, as I said, and it helps us really focus where we need to go.
Great, thank you. And finally, for our daily efforts and what we're living, anything from Res Life or PS in terms of just education, prevention, conversations, things like that. And Jill, you're muted if you're talking. Yeah, there you go.
So we work really closely with all of these individuals in terms of making sure that residents have really good information about testing, making sure that residents have good information about policies in the residence halls. And really then what we're also doing is trying to make sure that we are connecting with our students and keeping them engaged on campus in a COVID world. It's different in terms of how people eat, how people interact. But our RAs have actually done a really great job of having a lot of different kinds of programs on campus and different activities, both virtual and some that are in person, but with social distancing and certainly following state and guidelines that we get from the health department. And it's been a process. Again, we learn every step of the way, but at the same time, feel like things are, really moving along, and that, again, we've been successful in the residential spaces with this. We're really excited about our testing results and the trends that have been occurring.
Just a little bit from my part on education. Our department, Jess and me speak a lot to students as recently as an hour ago, just about educating students about how to stay safe and how to keep our numbers to where they are now. Couldn't be in a better place right now, Jess, and I'm knocking on wood and I'm not jinxing us. It's because of the dedication of this team, the community outreach, and we do, just on the Live Safe tips too. I talk about responding to them real time. I'm blessed to have a whole team of student ambassadors that work for our department. There's about 17 of them that respond to the Live Safe complaints a lot of times for us or with us, and go out and educate students about wearing masks, passing out masks, and educating them on distancing and stuff like that. So they're, essentially part of our patrol, part of our education, part of our outreach, working directly out of our community outreach office.
And speaking of education, I've learned a ton. So our Dean of Students, Aaron Isaac, started administrative walkthroughs. So he gets administrators and directors from around campus, and Jill's part of this too, to sign up for just walking around campus on the weekends when we expect, there to be some activity, just to have conversations with students and not to be walking around writing people up or punishing them, but, to hand out masks, to just talk and, see what students are experiencing and how it's going for them. So that's been really, interesting for me to do, because I don't find myself on the residential side of campus at 10 p.m. on a Saturday very often. So, that's been an interesting opportunity.
Or riding around in a golf cart when you're not golfing, right, Jess?
Exactly. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Great. So that's a little bit about what's kind of going on in the background every day. So everything from Live Safe to the testing to Ken will talk more about this, but, we have a 9 a.m. meeting every day. And then this bigger group, we have a 8:30 a.m. meeting Monday, Wednesday, Friday, just to touch base on everything, that's going on. And we think, Kaz said, knock on wood, we think it's working. These are the results from this week. Well, actually from last week, but the most up-to-date stuff on the dashboard. I'm sure you've been following. So currently, total, we've had 40 cases on our campus. So this includes people who are identified through the community testing, through health services testing, and people who got tested off campus and reported it to us. So, another lesson, if I'm giving parents homework assignments tonight, is to share with your kids that if they know of somebody who's positive, if they test off campus, they have to let us know, because we would only know if somebody tells us. So sometimes like a live safe tip will come in about somebody, self-quarantining, or, we hear that, oh, well, I'm not feeling well, so I'm going to self-quarantine. That's the worst thing that students can do. We want to be transparent. We want to know, what our true numbers are. And we want to be able to help these students. So this includes everybody that we know about that's on our campus, whether they've been tested through us or off campus. We've had no employees. We currently have no active cases. And we're really, really, really proud of that. So again, I can't emphasize enough, knocking on wood, about this. Looking at the bar chart, so this is how we started, and this is where we are. And just to give kind of a little background about this, because this was, as you can imagine, when we had 10 and 15, a very scary time in all of our lives, and we were spending a lot of time together. So the first week we had 1, then we had 6, and when we had this group of folks, they almost all knew each other, and we were able, thanks to the contact tracing, to isolate it back to one location that they were at. So, but what happens over time, I mentioned that every positive case has a series of contacts. It naturally grows, because then the third week, some of their contacts were positive. And then the following week, some of those contacts ended up being positive. And in this heavy week, thanks to the teamwork of some folks who are on here and a couple others, we were able to identify this back to a few student groups. And some were from off campus and some were from on campus. So it really does take a lot of detective work. You can't just say, well, we have some positives, they live here, maybe they know each other, maybe they don't. It really takes looking at, where do they live? Do they share similar classes? Are they part of the same sports team? Are they part of the same organization? And trying to really figure that out. So, when I say that this week was a scary time in our life, I mean, it really was. This series of weeks were Saturday morning, 8 a.m. calls, for 3 weeks in a row, Sunday morning, 8 a.m. calls, because, I mean, this was, concerning. So 15 positive cases, multiply that by however many contacts each of those people had, you've got a lot of people on your radar, and you don't know what necessarily you're going to see the following week. So, this week we took a lot of proactive measures and got a lot of people in to get tested that we were suspects were associated with these student groups. And we, I think, postponed some on-campus activities, and we took some other measures. We've closed areas of, we haven't closed a whole floor of a dorm, but we've closed common areas, pending test results. So we've reacted to these results instead of just kind of waiting to see how they play out. And then, they started to decline. And this is kind of where we're at now. And I can update, I'm not even sure my team knows, but the community test results from this week are all in, and we have 0 positives for a second week in a row. So we are, really, really happy about that. But I think this is an important time to mention, and you might have seen the news, that while our internal community is doing very well, Hartford is not doing very well right now. And this is what Kaz and I were talking about with the student group earlier tonight, is that, we're not in a position to let our guard down. We joke that, like, oh, this is the calm before the storm, because, we know that this could turn in an instant. Many of our peers, we communicate with them, weekly, have had outbreaks on campus, both from on-campus students and off-campus students. And oftentimes it's due to small gatherings, right? So it's not always a big party. You think, oh, big party or going to a bar. I mean, it could be that, but it's also a series of small events, not wearing a mask, not social distancing, not, washing hands, doing the things you're supposed to be doing. And when we're doing so well, it's so easy to say, well, you can let your guard down a little. I think, in having conversations, as a family, saying, that don't let your guard down, continue following those, this is working, continue getting tested when you get picked, and follow all those rules because, it's out there, it's active. And our neighboring institutions are facing some really difficult times right now, and it could turn in an instant, and we really hope it doesn't. So you've seen this. So this is our community testing results. So we started out doing the minimum, which was the state mandated 5 to 10% of the residential student body. And after a few weeks, we're like, okay, this is good, but it's just not enough. We wanted to know more. We wanted to get more data. We wanted to be able to test more students. So we switched our partner, and now we're, like I said, doing closer to 600 students a week. So that's about 20 to 25% of our residential student body. And we do test commuters as needed. And for the future, we're potentially looking at doing more of that. All right, so tell us about Team A, Kenna.
Hi, everybody. I'm back. So I wanted to talk a little bit, and I realize this isn't very clear looking at this graphic, but I'll just talk about it. We really worked hard to identify a multi-layer interdisciplinary COVID response team that consists of 3 levels, and 3 levels that I would say operate simultaneously. So I joke with the medical team, if you know anything about 80s cartoons, it's like we're Voltron and we just come together and we're one big robot in the end. So we have a medical team and a public health team. We have a logistics team and we have a service team. In layman's terms, just real to give you an idea of the 3 different levels. So our medical team consists of what Jess was talking about. We have medical staff from Hartford Healthcare, nurses, PAs, physicians that do all of the calling for students who are identified COVID positive, and then the contact tracing, which then triggers our response for quarantine and isolation on campus, which we do offer. Currently, we have about 119 spaces designated for QT and isolation. And if someone's isolating, they're COVID positive. If they're quarantining, it's basically the same thing other than someone's a COVID positive. And then if you're a close contact with someone. So, and then what we do is we move the student into a specific location, and you can see on the chart where it starts. So there's the medical kind of activates the team. And then we work in a public health model to move them to a specific space based on their designation. And that involves other members on this call and other people that aren't on this call to coordinate the response. So get the student moved into a specific location. I work with faculty directly to let them know that the student will be remote learning for a period of time, whatever their quarantine time is. And then during that time, they're monitored. So the medical team will call the student up to 3 times a day. And we also have a team contacting students at night and on the weekends to kind of hit on the socio-emotional aspect of what it's like to be in isolation, really. So how are you doing? Like having conversations, talking about what the experience is like, and really, how can we help in the service aspect of this process? So we can identify areas or students that may feel sad or there's an extra need. We worked super closely with Aramark, and Jeff's going to talk about their superb level of service in terms of the logistics with dining and a concierge service. So students that we do put in quarantine or isolation are really taken care of in the aspect of they get meals delivered. There's laundry service. We can do Grubhub on campus. So different little details like that, just to keep the students as comfortable as possible, as well as monitoring them medically until we can clear them. And then once this process is over, and I think the second slide just kind of goes into the last part of it. we clear them and they can go back to in-person classes and on-campus life. So I often joke that this chart, I love this chart, but it looks like one of those memes when you have all the things swirling around in your head. It's kind of funny, but it really is literally all these steps. And I am a parent liaison, so there's times where I'll have conversations with families if their son or daughter is part of this process. And we can talk about that, what that means. And really, we just keep going and improving. So I really think that everyone that's part of the multidisciplinary teams has really stepped up, and we kind of have evolved into this process and keep improving. So that is the isolation and quarantine process in less than 5 minutes. And I'm happy to answer any questions. I don't know if I missed anything, Jess.
No, I was going to say, can you tell them about like notifying professors and also like what Jen and Jeff are doing for social interaction?
Yep. So faculty is notified. It's an automated system. So we input them into our own system and they're notified that the student will be learning remotely for a certain amount of time. It's not specified why, other than they are. And then if faculty have questions, they contact me directly and have no problems contacting me directly. And we help the students navigate any issues that they would have academically. We've been able to get students, you know, things they need for class, engineering students that need kits or robotic kits, art supplies. We've gotten it there thanks to Jeff and Heather and their team and public safety. So that's been really great. And I honestly think faculty has been really accommodating with our students who experience this process. We haven't had any major issues. So everybody's really understanding and works with the student. And, you know, I haven't had any reports of anybody falling behind, which is really important. The other part is the concierge service that's offered. And I know Jeff's going to talk about that and specifically what the spaces look like. We've kind of created a condensed space of where the students will be housed if they are put into quarantine and what that means and what that consists of, which is a lot of different things for them to keep them comfortable in their spaces. And if you have questions, I'm happy to answer them in the chat.
Thanks, Kenna. Actually, my team's job is pretty simple. It's to keep your students healthy and having fun and enjoying their space while they're there. It's obviously not the best environment to be in when you're sick, you know, and sometimes students aren't sick, but it's really our job to make sure that they're nourished and they're happy and they're getting ready to go back to their original space. So what we've done, if you guys can see some of the pictures here, is we've made all the spaces as hotel-like as possible. So we've gotten furniture that's been delivered in spaces. We have their beds made. We have an extra pack of linen. We have all towels and all the things that you would need basically for a hotel stay. We've also put microwaves. There's refrigerators in every single space. We've stocked pantry items with microwavable things, quick snacks, cereals, and this is all in addition to the actual 3 meals that they get per day as well. So we have meals that are delivered 3 times a day. They're hot meals. They're not grab and go meals. They're coming right from our team. We also do mail services every day because you're in college, who doesn't get packages these days? So, and I know Amazon Prime, we just talked about it the last couple of days, right? So everybody's getting packages multiple times per day, but we pick them up once a day. We coordinate with mail services. We get the students the mail that they need. We also do laundry services on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. So we have a vendor that comes on campus. Laundry's left outside the room. They pick up the laundry and then they return it 2 days later. So a lot of students have been using those services and we're happy to provide them. We also have Grubhub delivery on campus. Our team that's delivering the food will deliver the meal, and then we'll also have a couple hour period of time after each meal as well to do Grubhub deliveries. So we have a lot of students that are taking advantage of that. We have a Starbucks on campus. Lots of students want coffee these days and different things to make sure that their bodies are fueled. So we're also working with facilities on any type of requests. So, you know, if there's a leaky pipe, if, you know, you may have issues with hot water, whatever it may be that may be in the space, just like a hotel would do, we're coordinating those as well. So lots of stuff that we're doing to keep your students on track and ready to go after they spend time with us. We also are coordinating with some of our outside vendors to actually clean their original space as well. So if they're COVID positive, we need to make sure that their space is clean and ready for them to return after their 10 days of isolation. So we're also coordinating those events as well with the university to make sure that they have a great space to go back to. So. And this is just a little bit more about the meals that we're providing. Like I said, we provide 3 meals per day, breakfast at 9 a.m., lunch and brunch on the weekend at 12 p.m., dinner at 6. We also help with any food allergies or preferences. We have a preference sheet for each guest that's there. So it's kind of like a little mini cruise ship, as you could say. We have students that have, they're sensitive to acidity. We have students that are obviously have gluten allergies and dairy allergies and those types of things. So we're equipped to handle all those requests. And like I said, we're also doing Grubhub deliveries and other specialty deliveries for all food service. So we also do at the end an exit survey for all the students that are in quarantine. It's our job to make it better, right? So if there's one thing that we can do that'll make their stay or the next person's stay that much better, that's what we're doing as well. So we get a survey back. We've done really, really well on our surveys. It's very hard to be personable, obviously, when it's supposed to be isolating or in quarantine. But we have a list of team members that are helping out with it. We have our conference services staff and also our catering staff that's actually delivering the meals. So your students are getting the best service they can on campus. So. And we have to kick them out sometimes. We've had a couple squatters in there that have stayed a couple days extra because they like the service. So I think that means we're doing a good job, right?
And I think this is a great example of building the plane while flying it. So, in our first couple, of moves of having to move people and realizing you're moving somebody who just found out they're COVID positive or, exposed to somebody who's COVID positive. They're scared. They're told to pack up their belongings, move across campus. They forget their charger. They forget their toothbrush. They don't bring their essentials. They're anxious. And, it only took, kind of going through a couple of those to realize we needed this to be a much better experience. And then it got to the point, like Jeff said, where we're all saying like 2 weeks with food delivered to us and a nice cozy place to be with, isolated from our families. We're like, we'll give it a couple.
How do you get that space? How do you get that space?
So, nothing has been perfect, but, we continuously try to improve and grow based on, what we experience as we're doing it. So thank you, Jeff. That's great. So I realized, Dr. Dimitra, you didn't get any of your own slides or bullet points. Did you have anything? There's some questions in the chat I'll ask you, but I don't know if you had anything you wanted to add.
Yes, I do actually. I saw a question go up on the screen just a little while ago about flu shots. Mm-hmm. I just want everyone to know that, yes, flu shots are available at health services. And we're actually also going to the location where the weekly testing is being performed, where the students go for that on October the 26th and the 27th, which is a Monday and Tuesday, and also November 2nd and November 3rd, another Monday and Tuesday, to give flu shots. Our nurse and nurse practitioner will be there for any students that would like to get their flu shot. And the other thing I'd like to add is we do COVID-19 testing at health services as well. So if a student isn't feeling well and needs to contact health services, we have a nurse that determines if the student will need a virtual visit or if they'd be better served coming in person to be seen. And after we evaluate them, if we decide that they need a COVID test, we usually are able to do that at health services of the same day. We have a large tent that looks like a circus tent right outside our entrance, and that's where we do all the testing. So the students don't need to actually go inside. We come right to them, and it's private, and we are able to do it very quickly. We send the test out to Quest Lab, so it's not a rapid test, it's the PCR nasal swab, and we usually get the results back in 2 to 3 days. If the test is done at health services, then we call the patient, regardless if it's negative or positive, to let them know the result. And obviously, if it's a positive test result, we instruct the student to stay at their room and wait for the university to contact them. We let the university COVID response team know, and they're very good about organizing and starting the process about getting the student into isolation and so forth. So the two big things I wanted just to say, we do have flu shots at health services, and we do also COVID testing at health services.
Thanks, Demetra. And as we move into flu season, I assume you'll be doing more testing of both when students come in showing any kind of symptoms.
Yes.
So yeah, don't be surprised. You think you might have the flu, but you have to get the COVID test as well. Great. So I think some of our questions actually in the chat correspond with some of our looking ahead and what we're thinking about. So, you know, part of it is getting through day to day, but also trying to look at the big picture of what are things looking like in November, what do they look like in December, what do they look like in January, and so on. So some big things on our mind, of course, is always testing. We're, you know, trying to determine, are we going to scale testing up even more? And what's challenging and also very interesting is we don't know exactly what's going to be available. Every day, new types of tests come out, you know, more rapid or, you know, just provide us with different types of opportunities. So, you know, we're watching carefully for that. Dr. Demetra mentioned the offering flu clinics. So we're doing that. Jill, do you want to talk a little bit about what's coming up in the next 5-6 weeks? I know some questions in the chat address that.
Certainly. So we are looking at what move out will look like or closing for the semester. And there was a question saying, will everybody need to take home their things? My hope is the answer will be no, but we don't know quite yet. We're going to pay really close attention to the numbers and look how things are trending and where we're going. But if we continue in the direction that we are headed, we are hopeful that students will be able to leave their items in their room. Of course, they can certainly take things home. Students will be going through with their RA and choosing an option should for some reason they not be able to come back in when we open in the spring and January, what they would do with their items if that happened. And so we will be doing a little bit of that, and they can certainly choose to take their things home. And as soon as we have that information, we will get it posted to our website. Very shortly, probably by early next week, we'll have a website that will be updated on a regular basis with dates, times, information, and we will also have a power hour in a couple of weeks that will be talking about those things in more detail. I also saw a question about like what clubs are taking place, and I'm not as familiar with that piece, but in terms of RAs and also our Residence Hall Association, which is a student group that works very closely with our Residence Hall staff, they've done a number of activities. One of the favorites is food trucks, and they will give out a number of free items to students in order to keep students and far enough apart. They actually have dots that they put, and if you go onto campus on one of those nights, the lines wind way around as students are standing in line for those trucks. We've had virtual bingo, we've had bingo on the lawn, we've had outdoor movies where we've given away blankets, and then people, you know, the blankets, you're sitting on your blanket, you can't sit close within 6 feet of other individuals. We have also done some things like scavenger hunts. They have hidden all kinds of things around campus and they'll do things along those lines. There was a comedian recently. And we have a number of virtual activities coming up that are being hosted by our different professional staff members and also our RAs. So if there are things that your student would like to see, please make sure they talk to their RAs or, you know, make suggestions. I saw there was a great suggestion about an ice skating rink. So if it's cold enough, doesn't that sound fun? Plus, I would really want to see Kaz on ice skates.
Yeah,
absolutely. Doesn't everybody?
I offered to juggle on the last meeting, right? Now you want me to ice skate. Maybe I can do both at once.
I was very, very impressed with I did the administrative walk around the night of the roller skating, and that was interesting to watch, but I was not putting roller skates on. So questions about, so you're talking about clubs and things to do. Are there, Jill, can you mention anything about common areas for students that, you know, want to gather, or it's in the Q&A?
Certainly. There are common areas in the residence halls. They are limited in terms of who can socialize in those. So in our neighborhoods, there are small spaces on each floor for each floor. There are also larger spaces in the basements that anyone that is part of that housing unit, those 4 buildings, can use. We have commons, which I see students, spending a lot of time in our dining facility, as well as we've created outdoor dining facilities for students to gather. And this has also been one of the questions that I've been talking about with Jess and several others of what are some other spaces on campus that we might be able to have open for students to be able to gather, since it is getting a little bit colder. Although I've been pleasantly surprised that people just kind of bundle up and are enjoying, the beautiful fall weather right now.
So I'm looking at both my Q&A and chat. So if a student tests positive for COVID, that person goes into isolation. Does his roommate also go into quarantine?
So if a roommate is identified as a close contact of said student who is positive, then we would move them into quarantine. So we are quarantining close contacts of students who are COVID positive. So sometimes that's a roommate and sometimes it's not, depending on the closeness and things of that nature. Most of the time, roommates are identified, but depends on the unit they're in. We do have units that are single rooms when people don't really interact, but it would be determined through contact tracing, if that answers the question.
And I saw somebody's question about are isolation and quarantine students kept separately, and the answer to that is yes. So there's quarantine spaces and isolation spaces, but you wouldn't put an isolation person with a quarantine person.
Correct. No. Mm-mm.
Demetra, what are the options for after 4 o'clock in terms of either telehealth or urgent care or Go Health or anything like that?
Yes, that's a good question. We do have options for students where to go after health services is closed, after hours and on weekends. We have several walk-in clinics. There's a Go Health Urgent Care that's, I believe, on the route that the shuttle bus takes them to, Bishop's Corner, that they can go to on weekends and after hours. So there's always options for them in that sense.
Oh, and what's the process for students getting tests at health services? So are they ready, if someone's not feeling well, can they come and get tested?
So yes, but in the past, prior to this COVID age that we're going through right now, students could come to health services and make the appointment right at the front desk window. But now that COVID is the situation, we're trying to limit the number of people that actually come to health services. So they're encouraged to give us a call. So they can call us and they can schedule, they'll probably talk with our nurse and they'll decide whether they would rather do a virtual visit that we can do for them, or if they need to they have a problem that we can't take care of virtually, then they'll have an appointment made and they can come in person to health services, but always call ahead of time.
What's typing? I think it's chill. It's okay. It's like a piano.
Either typing or tap dancing.
I am muted though, so I have no idea how you can hear that.
I just muted you.
Oh, thank you.
Norm, can you speak to shuttles? Shuttles being canceled.
There was a question on shuttles I didn't see.
Yeah, it's in the chat.
Okay.
You think about that one, and I'll look for another one. Yeah, the question about classes that are supposed to be in person but then get turned virtual and accountability, I would definitely encourage, I'm trying to think, the student to potentially reach out, or you to the department chair or the assistant dean of the college, because they are, being held accountable for delivering on their learning expectations. And I think, in most cases, we're seeing everyone, pivoting and doing what they're supposed to be doing. But in those cases, I would definitely encourage, a conversation with the department chair And if you're not sure who that might be, Center for Student Success is always a good place to start to get the right connection. So we have not finalized all of our return plans, working on that now, but I like that somebody asked if we were going to expect a positive test to return to campus. We're going to expect a negative test to return to campus, hopefully not positive tests. Yeah, very similar to what we did in the fall, in August. We'll be looking to do something similar for the spring. So getting tests before returning back to campus. Jill, you've answered so many questions in the chat. That's why you were typing away.
Well, and I'm going to just mention this again because the question popped up. We just don't know yet whether or not students will be required to take home all of their belongings. I was talking with a colleague today and she told me how great their numbers were. And then she goes, oh, we have 100 students in quarantine. My stomach almost dropped out. And I was like, oh, okay. And thinking your numbers aren't that great. If we can keep our numbers where they are now, our hope really, truly is that everything will stay here. And I've actually had students start to contact us that are looking to come back and are very excited to come back and live on campus, that we're living at home this semester. So if you happen to know of someone that, you know, has decided to stay at home for any reason or all of their classes were online this semester, we will have additional spaces available for students to move on to campus and getting that information out to students shortly. I actually talked to my assignments team this week and we plan to really try to do that as individually as possible and be reaching out to students and placing them into spaces that hopefully they know the students that are already there. And that, you know, I placed a student the other day and he was so excited. It's with his 3 best friends that he's going to come back to live with. So just another option for people.
Another question, Demetra. Do you contact parents if somebody tests positive or if they're a contact? I don't think we do if they're a contact.
No, I think that's, we ask the students if at each visit, if it's okay for us to talk with the parent about that particular visit, if they're 18 and older. So if they give us permission and a parent calls, we can talk about their visit. But if they don't give us permission, we won't be able to talk about that particular visit. So we usually don't inform the parents as a routine, but we definitely obviously inform the student and the university.
Just going through the questions. I see everybody else kind of is too. The flu shots can be for students who live on or off campus. You don't have to be a residential student to get a flu shot.
Correct. Yep.
Classes end December 7th, right? Yeah.
Last day of finals is December 14th.
Okay.
As well. So Jess, there's a question here that I think, you know, or Kenna, that would be great to answer. Are people in quarantine kept separate from those in isolation?
Yes, we answered that.
Oh, did you already?
Yep, and they are indeed. Indeed. The common areas are in the apartments. So Kathy asked a question about that. Unless you mean like outdoor spaces.
I think there was an answer. Did Jeff answer that? I think, or Jeff, do you want to talk about that again? Is that you who answered that question?
Yeah, sorry, it wasn't me. What was the question again?
I think there was a picture of some couches in one of the pictures Jeff had, and the question was, is there a common area associated with the living space? And yes, the picture you saw is an apartment. It's basically a townhouse apartment with a living room and bedrooms off of it. So that's what the common space is there that we're referring to.
Yeah, and Kenna's team would only put folks in the same apartment if they were they tested COVID positive or they were contracts and they were basically roommates or something like that. So nobody would be in the shared space or allowed in a shared space unless they were quarantining or isolating together. And it's been really, really great. I mean, the spaces are typically either 2 or 3 bedroom apartments with a kitchen and a common space. So, students are allowed to spread out. I think we go back to a little bit about mental health and making sure that students have room to roam around. So if they're in a small space and they're not allowed to go outside, just trying to provide them with the space is great. So been good.
So I saw a question, does quarantine get cut short if test comes back negative? So if you're identified as a close contact, high risk, you have to do the 14 days, even if you get a negative test. And that's not our rule, that's Department of Public Health and CDC guidance. Because tell me if I get this right, Demetra, if I said it enough, that you might not have enough viral load at the time of your test to test positive, and it can take up to 11 days or so to.
Yeah, the whole point of someone being in quarantine for 14 days once they've been exposed to a positive COVID case is that it can take up to that long for them to actually develop the infection. So even though they have a test within that time period that's negative, doesn't mean that 2 days from then they're not going to be positive. So they have to do the whole 14 days.
Demetra, it's Kaz. Is it okay if I change Jess Nicklin's doctorate to MD instead of PhD? I think she deserves it, right, Jess?
Like Norm said, I know more. He knows more about wastewater. I know more about testing and COVID than
Dr. Nicklin. There was a couple of things in there. One is I think Jess did cover about the random testing. They're done on Monday and Tuesdays. I know we covered it on last meeting, Jess, but random testing is done on Monday, Tuesdays, and the random testing, I know Jess and I have a different definition of targeting, but we do target certain groups sometimes on purpose, and the random testing is 20 to 25% sometimes. So, and those students are held accountable if they don't show up for testing. And we track them down one way or the other to do that for them. The other one, there was something about guests on there. We're pretty strict about guests, both off-campus guests and on-campus guests in each other's spaces, only because I'm certainly not comfortable opening that Pandora's box yet. I know the president has sent stuff out on it about, considering that in the near future to the campus. I don't know. So we're not considering that, but I get a lot of even live safe tips or complaints I talked to Jess about earlier today that we do get frustrations from students about not having guests. But right now it's important with the common spaces, they can mingle with students as long as they're distancing and using masks, but guests in their rooms, guests in their space, off-campus guests, not yet.
I saw a couple questions about commuter testing. So our testing has been primarily focused on the residential student body. We do test commuters, I would say, more on an as needed basis. Like I said, sometimes we have certain, clubs or groups, organizations that we try to, Kaz doesn't like when I say target, but we try to target or isolate. But we haven't taken on a kind of a random commuter sampling yet. It's something we're looking into doing, trying to get to more commuters. In our calls with the Department of Public Health, what we're gathering is that and the same for, I guess, K through 12, is that a lot of the spread, if you're wearing your mask and you're social distancing in the classroom, the spread isn't happening in the classroom. What we're more concerned about is what's happening, outside the classroom. Not to say it's not important, but that's why our focus has been on more residential students. But it's definitely something that we're looking into for the spring to expand the testing to include more commuters. And I know we probably won't get to every single question, but some of you also had some other questions that I wrote down that are like good ideas that we might actually know the answers to, like winter courses and what that's going to look like. Somebody asked about free winter courses. I do not know the answer to that, but it's something to bring back to the team. Anyone have any last questions they want to answer? I want to be respectful of people's time. I know we're getting close to bedtime for many of us. we said earlier, this is the over 30 club, the over 40 club. So, we're, we're getting sleepy.
Just
Yeah, go ahead.
to answer really quickly about going home before Thanksgiving, we close on November 24th at 10 p.m., but students can go home anytime after they've had their last on-person class on campus, and then they can continue to be remote at that point. And actually, we would encourage that. That typically happens when we close around Thanksgiving, that students will start to go home the weekend before. So please ask your student, because with different classes, they meet, different days of the week and those kinds of things. And certainly, please coordinate with them based on their last in-person class.
Any other final words from the panel?
Stay healthy, everybody.
Well, thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. It's so much more pleasurable to do these kinds of things when you have actually an audience and people asking questions and engaging. So we appreciate that. I think our next one, it's listed on the parents page. I believe it's the October 20th, and that's about registration. So if your son or daughter is, sophomore, junior, potentially, you don't need that one. But if this is your first time, going through this, you might want to attend. All are welcome. Talking about not only the registration process, but they'll touch on whether or not, if you want to go remote, what that looks like, process to do that, so you can get your questions answered then. And we will put this recording on the website probably tomorrow. So if you need anything, feel free to reach out to any of us. And thank you so much for attending. Have a good night, everyone.
Bye, everyone. Stay healthy.
Good night. Have a good night.
Good night.